Peace, Chiefs, and Deers. It's Bronzebird here with another video. Before I begin, like and subscribe. Thank you. So, obviously, dealing with COVID for about a year, 2 years, and all these different things, the conspiracy of where it comes from, what's the origin, who did what, who said what, where did it come from? Like I said, what's the origin, right? So, a lot of speculation that it was intentionally coming from the Chinese lab and it just spread like wildfire across the world. And that this was an agenda for China to come up on, and it proved successful. That this was all just for a financial gain or to weaken different nations, more specifically the United States, to weaken them. Now, to those who's probably more smarter than me on this subject, a lot will say that the United States is losing their global power already, and that China already gained their global power. And more specifically, if you pay attention to different places in the world about how a lot of infrastructure, all these different plans are happening in all these countries through Chinese loans, or more likely like this, that in places in Africa, countries in Africa that is, a lot of the places are being overran by Chinese government or Chinese officials. And that those countries in Africa, those natives are under the working of them. They have to go through them to get jobs and all these resources. And they're getting their resources still stolen. So what's very funny about this situation, getting into this topic of conversation about COVID and about how every day we're just going outside with masks to protect ourselves, is that it was very common to see Asians walking around with masks before the COVID situation happened. And so we would ask all these outlandish questions like, how come they're wearing masks, protecting themselves like this? Do they have some type of disease? Do they have the flu, or they're vulnerable to getting the flu, and all these different things? And then when I did research on this a while back about how the smog levels in China is really bad, and they have to protect themselves from the fumes and all these different things out there in these industrial cities in China. But just even idea about it with COVID, that we usually say that it's a pandemic and all these different things out there, and it's just to weaken the American public and all these different things out there, and still the global power, so it's all in their name. I mean, there's a lot of speculations that go into this, but I'm going to allow Fox to give more of a commentary on it, and I'll give a commentary on it as well. So, Pete.
House Republicans, meantime, very serious, releasing a report yesterday on the origins of COVID-19. Congressman Michael McCaul, who spearheaded the report, going after what he calls the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up.
It's the greatest cover-up in human history. I think the Chinese Communist Party are very concerned about this report coming out, telling the truth. The fact of the matter is they were playing with fire. They were genetically manipulating at the lab this gain of function that was taking place.
Now are we calling for World War III, everyone? Is this inevitable? Do you think that the United States has the willpower to beat out China, or China is going to basically just whoop our ass and take all the resources and we become prisoners of war? And I mean, I don't think, and it's like, but if they're really scared about it, what's going to be the outcome? Like, is everybody going to fight China at once? Like, I mean, these are questions I'm just thinking in my head on the fly, like it's just things that I'm thinking about.
Showing the coronavirus did indeed leak from the Chinese research facility in Wuhan, the Wuhan Virology Institute, something we have been reporting on the show since the very beginning of this pandemic.
But then again, though, wouldn't there be documents or certain clips from the past that I was already like foreshadowing that there was going to be a pandemic that was going to happen, especially with COVID? Like, these are questions that you have to ask yourself, because even if you look on IG, you know, there's these videos that come up of these famous cartoons making these whole entire little messages foreshadowing that there's going to be this big disease or something's going to happen out in the environment, such as locally The Simpsons is usually pulled out, so that they say all these different things out there that's going to happen. And more specifically, they just say out in your world that this is a foreshadow. This will happen, that you're living in a simulation, a simulation, however you say it. But yeah.
Meantime, Wuhan announced plans to test its entire population amid the recent uptick in COVID cases. Joining me now, retired four-star general and Fox News senior strategic analyst, Jack Keane. General, there's much to discuss that's in this report. One of the things that jumps out is that the report concludes that the virus escaped sometime prior to September 12th. 2019, that would be much earlier than even other people expected, and that the military world games went ahead to avoid China being embarrassed, and that could have been a super spreader event around the world.
And the thing about that is 2019, they said this, but I started seeing the coverage about it around late November, early December, when they started talking about COVID and about how it was in Wuhan, China, and all these different things happening out in China. So yeah, definitely they was covering it up. Of course, they was sitting up there not really talking about it and trying to put it under wraps so that we don't have to be scared and panic. But then when time came and this alleged pandemic started to fall into the United States soil, that's when they started to say, oh, okay, now we got to take precautions. It's really weird how they play these games. But just from my perspective, I really do think that it was obviously planned out, but they just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose our cool once it got mentioned. It's just that, oh, it's not in the United States, so don't worry about it. It's just in China. But then it started spreading to other countries, then got over to the United States.
Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, is it more incriminating evidence pointing the finger at China, that their government associated with the WIV laboratory caused an accidental spread, likely accidental spread, of the COVID. And to me, the most revealing thing is that China, to this date, while they're denying that the lab had anything to do with it, well, provide us the evidence of where the origin really is. And of course, there's silence on that subject because this evidence continues to mount that the lab was the origin of it. They're saying around September the 12th, because that is when the lab took its databases offline, having anything associated with viruses. And they believe that was very telling. The second thing is that the hospitalizations began to increase. They looked at satellite photo of the activity surrounding the hospitals in Wuhan City. People at the lab were getting sick, but people in Wuhan City were getting sick as well, given the increase in hospitalizations. And then you mentioned the military games took place, world military games, that is, in October in Wuhan City. And many of the athletes went home and they developed the virus and began to spread the virus. So all of that evidence, and there's other evidence in the report itself, points the finger at the Wuhan Institute of Virology laboratory. And we're also waiting an intelligence report from the Biden administration, which is due out in a few weeks. And I'm certain that they've got to underscore the circumstantial evidence at best, that this clearly is the incriminator of spreading this virus. And the thing that bothers me to this day, Dagan, is we don't hold China accountable for the spread. In other words, the origin is deception. We can see that. But the spread took place because they shut down all domestic traffic out of Wuhan, air and ground, but permitted international flights. And I believe President Xi did that because he wanted other economies to suffer, not just his own. And that's international criminal behavior as far as I'm concerned.
And this really just popped into my head while this man was just saying this. Isn't it ironic that when it came to the virus first spreading around and that beloved ex-president Trump sat there and was talking about the virus and was calling it the China virus and the Chinese virus, and the whole entire media and everybody in the public got all upset. And it was like, well, what? It originated from there, so why y'all upset? And I mean, like, this was all a debate, but when we really get down to where it came from, everything was circling back to Wuhan, China. So why were people getting upset that whether he ignorantly was calling it the Chinese virus, it still had some type of origin from China? It's not like it came from Russia, India, Kazakhstan, or other places. It was coming from China. So the thing about it is the global powers to weaken the economical systems and try to take not even try, already taking the economical powers from the United States. I mean, this is just something I'm really just thinking about. And I'm just hoping you guys really see exactly what's going on right now.
Would we, if we wanted to target Xi Jinping with charges on the international level, would we need to get more countries on our side to do that? Is that a legitimate possibility with the Biden administration, General?
Well, they've been silent on this subject, and actually, President Trump, while he mentioned it a few times, really the focus was always on the deception surrounding the origin. Yet a Biden administration would have to take up the mantle. I mean, the good news is there is mounting international criticism of China surrounding COVID because of their deception concerning that. And then the entire—
My question is, what happens now?
Propaganda, misinformation campaign they did to change world opinion, and all of that largely backfired on him, frankly. So yes, Xi has got international headwinds as a result of their behavior, and rightfully so.
Rightfully so. Let's talk about what Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has been doing overseas, or in terms of building up.
That's enough. Just something for you guys to think about. Peace.